Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we had to make a very difficult decision to cancel our CIF Southern Section Fall Sports Championships. The reason we had to do so, we just have not made enough progress for our fall sports to even begin. That's so disappointing, and I know very, very, very hard for our student athletes and all those involved. We also are not able to have viable league play, which we've said from the beginning was going to be necessary for us to conduct our section championships. And the fact that we haven't been able to start the window for viable league play has rapidly slipped away. We also have travel limitations involved, where schools would not be allowed to travel among different counties and different locations throughout the Southern Section footprint, another factor that we had to consider. And so what is from this decision that our schools can take away? Well, they can take away that they have time now remaining in the fall season of sport to schedule as many contests as they possibly can. League contests, non-league contests that have already been postponed or canceled could now potentially be added to our season up until the end dates for each sport. We hope that is something that will be of benefit to them without any barriers or anything from the Southern Section office that would prevent them from using that time to their advantage. As for our spring sports, we remain on schedule. We remain ready to go with those as planned. Several of those sports are in the purple tier. And once the stay-at-home order is lifted, they would be able to begin immediately. And hopefully then we would get the other sports in the tiers beyond purple tier to come back and be able to start as well. So our spring sports remain as we originally planned. And so with that said, I'm more than happy to take your questions.
Our first question is from Dan from the Southern California Industry.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Commissioner Wigod. Why was the announcement regarding fall playoffs made today instead of a later date? And what are the financial implications for the Southern Section with the cancellation of the fall playoffs?
Thank you, Dan. Once the guidelines came out from the California Department of Public Health in mid-December, at that time I made the commitment that we would come back on January 19th and make the announcement as to the status of fall sports championships in the Southern Section. We believe that would be enough time since December 15th to evaluate where we are. Unfortunately, we haven't made any progress. If anything, we may have gone backward in terms of trying to get out of the purple tier and trying to get these other sports up and running. So this was the appropriate time so that our schools, again, would have the time remaining. Our football programs can play up until April 17, cross country up to March 27, volleyball March 20, those other sports, water polo March 20. Those sports would then have the opportunity to utilize this time if they can hopefully get some game schedule. Financial implications are huge. We depend on championship playoff revenue for perhaps 50% of our operating budget. We are struggling with that tremendously. As you know, we've had to let employees go and have furloughed employees and cut expenses and done everything that we can to try to manage this crisis financially as well. And those are huge challenges for us as an organization going forward, that our schools will suffer as well. We share revenue with our schools. Championship playoff revenue comes their way as well. And obviously, they're not going to receive any of that either. So definitely has a big impact on our finances going forward.
Next up, we have James Esposito from the Southern California Industry.
I have no question.
Connor Moore said, so Live.
Thank you. Before I ask my question, is anyone else having trouble hearing Rob? Am I the only one who hasn't been hearing him, or are you guys also in that boat?
I can't hear him. I didn't hear one word.
Yeah, Tom, I think we're having some trouble hearing.
Okay, we're gonna work on that. Just so you guys can help me out. Should we not wait until the end of the question before we tell us we don't have any sound?
could help us out with that part of it, that would be great. Thank you. I thought it was just me.
I thought it was me too.
And you can hear it on the YouTube channel. You can hear
I'm
those.
quite capable of making that mistake.
Okay, we're testing again to see if anyone or everyone can hear.
Sort of faint. Well, that's a good sound.
Oh, yeah, they need to listen through this, taking it up here.
Also, if you guys, want to, it might be easier for you to hear him. Stay on the Zoom, but also pull up the YouTube link. You're asking questions through the Zoom, but you might be able to hear better through the YouTube link.
Could someone put that link in the chat?
I'll text it to you, so.
I've seen that link, on the, email that we got, the confirmation email.
Yeah, everybody's got it.
Wait, okay.
From the CI,
It's in the chat
CI
now,
Twitter
Frank.
link. From the CI Twitter link, you gotta click on it, and you'll go to the YouTube live.
It's in the chat. It's in the chat as well.
Do we want to test him out?
Okay, we're going to test it again. Again, our apologies for any technical difficulties that we're having. Are we able to hear now?
Can we hear guys?
You cut out for a second, but now we can.
Okay, Tom, let's try your question again.
Sure, thank you for doing this, Rob. I appreciate it. I know you're waiting to contact all the schools that played games last week in violation of state health guidelines. When can we expect an update on whether those schools will face a fine, suspension, or dismissal from the section? And which other schools played games besides Capistrano Valley Christian and Santa Ana Calvary Chapel? Thank you.
Well, Connor, we had confirmation that we had 4 member schools that had played football contests last weekend. I have had the opportunity to speak to the principals of all 4 member schools today, either this morning or right before this press conference. So continuing to work with them and get as much information as possible before making any ultimate determinations. But that will be coming soon.
All right, so let's go back to Dan O'Connell from the Southern California News Group.
Thank you, Tom and Commissioner Wigod. Why was the announcement regarding fall sports playoffs made today
Well, it was made today.
instead of later?
Yeah.
And what are the financial implications of the Southern section canceling the fall playoffs?
Well, the reason we made the announcement today is it's the date that I had committed to back on December 15th when we received the most recent guidelines from the California Department of Public Health. We believed once we received those guidelines, saw the different colored tiers applied to the fall sports and spring sports for that matter, we would take the next month or so to determine where we would be around this time frame. And so around now, when we haven't made much progress in terms of our sports being able to start, we wanted to free up the time that was remaining in our seasons for our schools to be able to schedule games. And once our Southern Section Championships were removed from the calendar, that now gives our schools maximum flexibility to reschedule, postpone games or cancel games or hopefully league games that they haven't been able to play yet and use that time. And this had to be done to give them enough time to do it. In terms of financial implications, they're huge for our organization. They're also for our member schools. We depend on championship playoff revenue for approximately 50% of our operating budget. With no revenue coming in, as you're aware, we've had to have furloughs of our staff. The staff that are remaining have taken income cuts, reductions in health and medical benefits. We are not able to revenue share with our member schools, so there's money that is returned to our member schools that they are not going to receive. So it's been a major implication to us financially, and something that's been a huge challenge for us going forward.
Okay, guys, just a reminder, let's make sure we're all muted because we're getting a tremendous amount of feedback. So unless you're asked a question, let's all stay muted, please. Thank you. Next up, we have Fred Robledo, Southern California News Group.
Hi, Mr. Wigod. The question I've got right now is with, a lot of the high school football teams we're seeing have decided to play club football. I have Damien down here in Laverne that has gone on record that, they'll probably go and play club football. And I'm wondering if that is something you are concerned with, especially a lot of the private schools. A lot of the public schools are really bound by these health restrictions. And it seems like a lot of the private schools are kind of just making these decisions on their own. Now, I know CIF doesn't govern these club leagues, but these teams are practicing on campus, apparently full-on practices. Are they still bound by the CDPH rules of just social distance practices, conditioning workouts? If they are doing more than that, are they in violation of what CIF allows right now? And just your general feeling on these teams playing club football?
Well, Fred, I think one of the major misunderstandings perhaps that's out there is that people believe there are separate guidelines related to youth sports for club programs and education-based athletics like what we are involved in. And that's absolutely not true. The same guidelines that we are following are the guidelines that all organizations should be following. And I think the most frustrating thing for us, our member schools, for those who are seeing this happen, is that nothing is being done about people who are violating not only the guidelines for youth sports, but even the stay-at-home order that's been in effect for the last 3 weeks. So I know that our student athletes, our parents, our coaches, I know people are looking for avenues to try to play sports because the high school sports are shut down, but they're not playing under different rules. They're not playing under a different guideline that for non-high school programs that exist for high school programs. So I truly understand that and know how frustrated people are in seeing that play out over the last few weeks for sure.
Next up, we have Tim Burke, OC Sports Center.
Thank you, Rob and Tom. Does the stay-at-home order need to be lifted in order for all sports to proceed? And what are the chances that the tiers could be changed, allowing more sports to be played?
Well, you're correct, Tim. We must have the stay-at-home order lifted before anything can happen. And that includes the January 25th date that was originally put out by the California Department of Public Health as a competition date that could resume here in California. But the stay-at-home order still remains. And I actually saw just before this press conference the latest county tiers for the week of January, or the date of January 19, and there were no changes from last week except for the date. So right now, the stay-at-home order is in effect, and if it stays in effect, then there can't be any competition among high schools in the sport of cross country starting January 25th, as that's the only sport we have in the purple tier. As for the effort to continue to work with the California Department of Health and the governor's office, that does continue. There are still conversations between the CIF state office and those entities. We are still trying to work with them on how a potential return to play could be done in a healthy and safe manner. And we'll continue to do that as long as we can. But at the current time, that's the situation we're in right now, and we have to respect where we are at this particular moment.
Next up is Lauren Kopp of the Cerritos News.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Rob. Thank you very much. If schools do decide to play some of the fall sports, will those individual or team records be counted or recognized by the CIF-SOUTHERN section record book?
No, they would not. They must be played under the guidelines from the California Department of Public Health. And right now, again, with the exception of cross country in the purple tier, all the other sports in the fall are in the orange tier, and are not permitted to be played at this time. So those games would not count. They are not games that should even be played. If they are played, and there are teams out there representing their high schools, based on the letter that came out from the CIF state office today, notifying all 1,600 plus member schools in the state of California that they cannot be in violation of public health guidelines and represent their high schools and be high school teams. So that should hopefully clear up any confusion that might be out there, and make sure that people are aware of what this means going forward.
Eric Bull, runner space.
Sorry, Rob, I wanted to ask what your response or the section's response has been. And you just mentioned a few moments ago about cross country and the purple tier. By my last count, as of this past weekend, that student athletes in cross country and track have gone across state lines to compete in, I think, 13 different states since the fall and up until this past weekend. I mean, obviously with state championship being taken away, now section championship being taken away, I mean, what's the response to those young men and women, like that's realistically their only outlet and could be their only outlet?
Well, Eric, first, my heart to you and your family. Would be remiss if I didn't mention that first. As to your question about cross country, it is in the purple tier. If the stay-at-home order is lifted and the competition date of January 25th remains, and those students could begin to compete, they would be competing in a dual meet format. If cross-country schools wish to have multiple school events, they can apply through their local county and the county health department to see if they can get permission for those events to happen with multiple schools. And for us, in terms of trying to conduct the Southern Section Championships, the challenge that we saw in front of us that we just didn't think could be overcome by the time that these championships were scheduled was the idea that we would have one location, have 7 counties worth of student athletes, coaches, traveling to that one location and be able to conduct championships in a normal way by the end of March. And so, again, cross country will have their opportunity, hopefully, to compete, but they will have to do so under the guidelines of the California Department of Public Health. And if that stay-at-home order is lifted, that could be as soon as this coming Monday, the 25th of January.
Andrew Turner. Andrew Turner, Daily Pilot.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Rob. Thank you for having me on. My question was very much in the same vein as Eric's about what we saw in terms of why we weren't going to be able to have a cross-country finals. I wondered if that had anything to do with the fact that we didn't have the ability to hold those for any of the other sports. We just didn't want to offer it to one sport only. And then also as a follow-up to getting permission from the county health officers for multiple school events, what do you think the likelihood is that these seasons can culminate in league championships?
Well, the first part of your question, with the exception of cross country, all the other sports also involved a travel issue. For example, if we're having a water polo championship or a girls volleyball championship, we have instances where a school in Santa Barbara County would travel to Orange County, or would a San Bernardino County school be allowed to travel to Ventura County? And under the current situation we have with the time remaining in the fall sports season, we just didn't see where that was going to be possible for us to run those kinds of championship tournaments where our schools would be traveling. And then again, back to cross country, it was the same issue with picking one location and having everybody travel to the same place, not really being able to do that kind of thing. So what that leaves for our schools is dual meet competition, what you suggest, perhaps league finals will be able to be conducted and so forth. But again, they'll have to apply to their local county health organizations. And I certainly am not one to speculate on what those health organizations will do with the applications, but I would certainly encourage our schools who are wishing to do that they get the ability to do so through their county health organizations. And if there's a way for that to happen, then hopefully it will. But I'm not in the chair that approves those kinds of things. So for me to speculate whether that can or cannot happen really is up to those 7 different county health organizations throughout our section.
Again, guys, just a reminder, staying muted when we're not asking questions. Next up is Lester Cash from the Prep Baseball Report.
Otherwise you hear him.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's right.
Can you repeat who's next?
Sorry.
Can you repeat who's next? Nobody's asking questions.
Les.
Les.
That's the question right now.
Maybe you're volume.
Hold on 1 second, Les, I'm sorry, we're still battling there. Give me 1 second.
Try again, maybe?
Let's ask your question again one more time.
All right, here we go. So specific to baseball, what requirements are necessary for it to potentially move tiers in order for a season to be played in the spring? And secondly, will there be a minimum games played required in order to host and or compete in a championship? And will that specific championship be expanded potentially to more teams?
Well, that's the issue is going to be when or if baseball is able to move into the red tier and then be able to resume and start to play games. We aren't going to be sure about the travel situation at that time as well. So we're still going to have to monitor that issue. As I was mentioning with cross country in the fall, the sport may be able to resume competition, but the question will be how far the limit is in terms of some of the schools traveling around to play. So we are scheduled to start baseball and softball in the red tier on March 19. That is 2 months from today. Hopefully we're making progress towards that time and we can get close to that happening if it doesn't happen on March 19, but soon after. And then once that happens, we have to see how it develops among our 7 counties to know what we're dealing with. Again, going back to league play. League play is a necessary component and element of any championship competition that we can host. So we'll have to see this all play out in the time ahead. And a question about whether expanding the playoffs or doing other kinds of modifications as needed. I'd like to believe that we will keep our flexible approach to this as we've tried to be flexible from the start and do what we know is in the best interest of as many of our schools as we possibly can. So that's how we look at this going forward over the next couple of months as it relates to your question with baseball. And then softball is right there with them in terms of red tier.
Okay, Oscar from Outlook Newspapers, please. Oscar, are you there? Okay, let's move on to Mike G from the 562.
Hey guys, thanks for having the press conference. I've got a question and then a follow-up, if that's okay, Tom. Rob, the California Department of Public Health has missed some of its own deadlines for updating guidelines. And I know they were a couple months late in responding to the CIF state and your guys' proposals about fall sports. What is your sense of how much they are or aren't prioritizing the return of youth sports and high school sports How open or not open has that dialogue been between you guys and the state?
Well, it's been frustrating, and I would be, I'm not being honest if I didn't say that it has been frustrating. We have been in that dialogue really since October, and at times we felt an ear that was taking into account what we were bringing forward, and at times we haven't felt that way. Right now, it's been an extremely difficult time with what is happening around our state. Does not mean that we've been out of touch or not staying in contact with the governor's office and the California Department of Public Health. But, we're going to continue to do what we can to try to move the return to high school sports forward. I know there are other things happening out there, like last Friday's Let Them Play rallies and other things going on where all voices are trying to go forward to those entities that have such a big part in what's happening now and where we can go, and trying to let them know how much we want the opportunity to return to play. And we're going to keep doing that. And we're supportive of groups like Let Them Play and others who are saying the same message that we are. We want the student athletes back in a healthy and safe way. And we'll continue to do that. But the California Department of Public Health, in honesty, does have the old state to take into effect. They are obviously dealing with much more than just high school athletics. And everyone has to be at least recognizing that situation too. So that's how we see it. And we'll continue for as long as we can to keep our message in their mind and in their ear.
My follow-up, if that's okay, Tom, is, I've seen schools and I've seen leagues and school districts and coaches, and I've seen the CIF Southern section, the CIF state, and I think even the media has taken heat from people who think that it's any one of those people's responsibilities to decide when high school sports start. I see your guys' chat is being spammed by a couple hundred kids saying, let us play on the YouTube channel. What's up, kids? Can you just sort of once and for all, and I just don't feel like the public messaging around this has been good. Can you just clearly state into the microphone who's responsible for the green light, red light on whether or not high school sports happen?
Well, I appreciate your question, Mike, and I appreciate where you're coming from, because I, like you, am extremely frustrated by what I have seen. Some of it really is hard when if anyone thinks for 1 second that the CIF-SOUTHERN section does not want student athletes to be out participating in education-based athletics, they are absolutely 100% wrong. And what we have said since March and when this shut down is the same thing that we are saying today. This is an individual school district, private school decision on whether student athletes can resume to play athletics, following the guidelines of the California Department of Public Health and local health authorities. It is not the CIF's guidelines. It is the California Department of Public Health's guidelines. And our schools, and we're reminded of that today, cannot be out conducting their programs in violation of those health guidelines as CIF member schools. So if there's anything that could be more clear, and I would wish people would understand more, it is that dynamic. It is an individual school district, private school decision following the guidelines of the California Department of Health and local health authorities. That is the scenario, and it's been that way since March. And I've written about it many, many times. I've stated it many, many times. And for some reason, that message just doesn't always get through to people. And that has been disappointing because, again, if there's anyone for one moment who believes that we are benefiting from this, I've already explained what it means to us financially, the future of this organization. I've had to look at people I care about tremendously and tell them that we have to furlough them from their positions here in our office, and along with the other sacrifices being made, both on professional and personal level. And I honestly hope that if this is in some way helpful in getting that clear message out, then that would be great to know that going forward.
Eric Sonheimer, Los Angeles Times.
Hello, the CIF Medicine Committee has approved the city section and several other sections to play their final football games on April 30th. You have it listed for the southern section on April 17th. Is there any chance of you changing that date? Also, if no football games are played, can you clarify the transfer rule? So that would mean that anybody who is a student this year and doesn't play football would then be eligible to transfer to any school they want for this fall with no restrictions. Is that correct? Those are the two questions.
Okay, Eric, first about the April 17th date, that was the original date that was scheduled for CIF football regionals, which was going to be the last date of the season. And so we've incorporated that date in terms of using that as an end date for us in the Southern section. There have been discussions about extending that into the end of April to April 30th. We haven't quite gotten to that discussion point yet. Perhaps at the time that football can resume, hopefully if it does resume in this fall season, we can have that discussion and maybe consider a couple more weeks for the ability for schools to play. But I don't want to commit to that today because, again, I don't even know when we're going to actually start. And if that becomes a factor that's really important and is beneficial to our students and student athletes, then we can consider that. If a student does not participate in interscholastic athletics for a season, so if you use the football season as an example and there are no interscholastic football contests played, then you would be correct that a student would be what we call non-participation, and they would have the ability to transfer to another school and play football for another school in the 2021-2022 school year by virtue of the fact that they did not participate in the 2020-2021 school year. So that is what is called non-participation.
Michael Levitsky, CV Weekly.
Yes, hi, Mr. Commissioner. Just wondering if vaccines are rolled out in adequate timing by spring seasons, will you require or at least encourage coaches, officials, and or team trainers to get vaccinated in order to be able to participate in interscholastic scholastic activities?
Well, in response to that question, Michael, the issue would be that's an individual decision in terms of what a school would do with those that they employ, because the coaches are not employees of the CIF-SOUTHERN section. They're employees of the schools that hire them and bring them on. And in terms of officials, that would be a decision made by individual officials whether they wish to get vaccinated or not. It's not going to be in the purview of the Southern section to require vaccinations for anyone to participate in athletic programs. Those would be handled by the different entities that they are related to. So that wouldn't be for us to decide on behalf of all who participate in education-based athletics.
Okay, we've gone through our first round of questions, follow-ups. We'll start with Eric Cole.
Thanks, Tom. And Rob, thank you so much for your kind words and obviously for the people in the office, son and my mom and myself. So thank you very much. Didn't have a chance to say that before. At the same time that you guys were releasing your information today, or very shortly thereafter, that the LA City section had said that they were going to try to have their cross-country championship on that final date. And I'm not asking you to talk about their decision versus your decision, but it's the hardest thing, going back to the fact that you guys have the largest amount of member schools in the state in 7 counties, and obviously the fact that a smaller section like the LA City section could potentially feel more comfortable in doing so because they're only dealing with a smaller amount of schools or one county. Is that like the biggest hurdle for you guys in trying to hold these championship events, is because it's the biggest section, therefore spanning the greatest geographic area?
You're absolutely correct. That's exactly the difference. The entire membership of the Los Angeles section is contained in one county and for the most part, one school district. So for them, a decision like that is a different decision than what we face with, again, the large geographic area that we encompass. And then again, the site that we have selected for our cross-country championships happens to be located in Los Angeles County. So not knowing exactly how that would work out with other counties traveling into Los Angeles County, whether Los Angeles County would allow schools and so forth to come from the surrounding counties to a location in Los Angeles County. And even if we moved it to a different county, it would be the same issue. Whereas for Los Angeles section, they don't have to consider those factors. They are in LA County, and if the local health authorities allow the schools to travel to a location within that county and the only ones coming are from that particular county to that location for that championship, then certainly they may be given the authority to go ahead and do it. So there are differences among sections, and that's a pretty significant one as it relates to the sport of cross country.
Steve Fryer.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hey, Rob, I missed out on the sound on this earlier today, but this is what I want to know is what's in store for the Calvary Chapel and Campus Central Valley High Schools for their participation in the football game Saturday?
Well,
Is that what you said that earlier?
Yeah, sorry about that. Steve, there were 4 schools that we became aware of, not just the 2 that you mentioned from Orange County, but actually one from a school, Los Angeles County, one in Riverside County. So today, as we've continued over the weekend to get all the information that we could get, I have spoken to the administrations at all 4 of those high schools and continued that process of getting all the information that we need. And along with that came the notification that all those schools and all of our 1,600 plus high schools in California are not allowed to play contests in violation of California Department of Public Health guidelines. That's all happened in this first part of today. So we're obviously at the point where we have virtually all the information we're looking for, and then now we need to consider it and make sure we know what we're doing going forward.
Lauren Cobb. Looks like Lauren is not there. Let's go with Fred Robledo.
Hi, Rob. I kind of want to play Monday morning quarterback with you here. You know, back in the summer when the decision was made to cancel the fall sports and go to the 2 season of sport in January, it was obviously with a lot of hope that the situation with COVID-19 would be a lot better. It's obviously a lot worse than it was, back in August and September. And we saw a lot of high school football teams across the country that were able to have seasons. Now I know it was a CDPH decision that you have to follow. But what are your thoughts? When you look back, do you think they made, that they made the wrong decision in not allowing you to play then, given where we are now? And do you think we could have pulled off a season in the fall?
When we stood up on July 20th and announced our calendar, I truly believe that was the best chance that we had to have all of our sports, full regular seasons, section championships, even state regional type of championships for every one of our sports. It was going to be a huge challenge to fit them all into 2 seasons instead of 3. But I truthfully believed at that time. And when we got to the middle of December and we were able to start season 1, that we would be ready. And it's been incredibly disappointing to know that we are in a worse position today than we were back on July 20th when we made this announcement. I don't believe at the time we made that announcement that we were ready for fall sports at that time. California Department of Public Health certainly said that we were not. And I'm not sure that especially in some of the sports that were just about ready to start within a couple of weeks of that date, they were going to be able to be prepared without the entire summer and most of the spring not available to them. I mean, there was a lot of factors at that time that we really believed by being prudent and giving as much time possible to get us to this mid-December launching point that we were hoping for, that we were giving our student athletes the very best chance. And I still believe that today at that time. What's been disappointing, obviously, is we know it's happened in other states. And I think the one message that we've tried to convey is give us a chance. We've told the governor's office, we've told the California Department of Public Health, we suggested a roadmap forward in October that we believe was workable from health professionals on our CIF Sports Medicine Advisory Committee. And we presented all of that, and we just want our opportunity. And I believe if we get the opportunity, our education-based athletics programs will do it right. And if there are issues that have to be dealt with and postponements or hiccups or things that have to be addressed, I know we'll address them. And I know our school professionals will do it the right way. And so I think, for all of us, as long as this has gone on, I think there's just a stark disappointment in the fact that we've never even been given the chance. And I will still try to advocate for that position. I will still hope that we are given an opportunity, but that has been something that is incredibly frustrating, not just for obviously for me and all of us that we are working here, but certainly for everybody involved in education-based athletics, from student athletes and coaches and athletic directors and principals and parents and media members and officials and everybody involved. It's been incredibly frustrating to not even have been given the opportunity. So that's how I feel about that.
Thanks, Rob.
Don O'Bono.
Commissioner, the message has been for high school athletes, during this process is to stay ready, not give up. But with the prospects of, regular athletics, this fall diminishing, and then you hear a lot about the mental health challenges that the kids are going through. What's the message to high school kids that are hanging out, waiting for high school athletics, and knowing that they see, clubs playing their athletics here in Southern California?
Well, I'd like to work backward. And the one thing I would say in that regard is to say, look, if you're a spring sports student athlete, we're hoping that you will be on schedule. You will be having a full regular season, the opportunity for section championships, state championship, regional championships, if possible. So for that group, I would say the path forward is still on schedule in that regard. Obviously, again, we'd have to follow the guidelines of the California Department of Public Health, but for them, that's what I would say right now on January 19th. For our fall sports student athletes that waited until mid-December to get started and have not been able to do so yet, today's announcement at least allows even more time that's potentially available for you to get some competition, to get games, to maybe get league games, to get all that done prior to the end of season one. So again, I don't lie to anybody, and I haven't lied to our student athletes. There have been people who have said to me, "Oh, just tell them all it's over." Well, it's not over. I don't believe that it is. There is still time left in our fall sports, approximately 2 months, even longer than that for our football programs. Our spring sports, hopefully in the next couple of months, we will see the improvement necessary so that the fall sports can start, and that would mean the spring sports could be able to get going as well. And we can see, this thing by the end of our school year in June, that we were able to accomplish some things. And I just don't believe that today's the day to tell our student athletes that we're done fighting for them, that we're going to give up. As long as there's time remaining, then we need to keep that in mind and hopefully try to keep them focused and staying positive towards what's in front of them and deal with it as it comes. And that's what we've been doing since March. And we hope that we're going to see that movement in the other direction. And until the time comes when all of that is not possible, then that would be the time to say, I'm sorry, it wasn't able to happen. Again, remembering where the guidelines come from and who makes the ultimate decisions on this. Always know the CIF Southern section, and I think the CIF as a whole, the other commissioners and the other sections, and the state office, every single one of us wants this to come back. Every single one of us wants to watch you do what you love to do and what we love to watch you do. So we're going to continue with that. I've never lied to you, and I'm not lying to you today. There's still time. There's time for the fall. There's time for the spring. As long as that's the case, we're going to keep fighting.
Mo Orr, the high school narrative.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Commissioner Wigod, for taking the time to put this together to give the media a chance to be able to ask a question. Commissioner Wigod, you just talked about wanting to play, and you see on social media how many people, parents, think that CIF and the Southern sections are in charge of whether or not kids play or not. My question to you, Commissioner, is there a hard date that you have that you and CIF have that says, listen, we have to cancel the season? Because as we can already see, of course, football, you guys just moved to April, which is awesome. What is that hard date if you have one?
Well, I think that was what was important about today's announcement, is that by having the Southern Section Championships off the schedule, all of that time that was scheduled for those championships now goes back to our schools. So there really isn't going to be a drop dead date or anything that comes from us. The only dates that are applicable now are the end of season dates that we included in today's announcement. And that means that if a school can't even start, let's say, water polo until March 2nd, and they want to play until March 20th, then they will play from March 2nd until March 20th. So as I mentioned, this will now revert to our schools, and they'll have the ability to try to do what they can in the time that's remaining to them, provided the guidelines will allow them to play. So there won't be a date coming from us to tell the fall sports seasons have to end. We said today in the statement, we are not canceling the fall sports seasons. We are canceling the part of the fall sports seasons that we're directly in control of, which is Southern Section Championships. But the rest of the time remaining between today and the end dates of those particular sports is now entirely in the hands of our schools. And hopefully they can use that time to their benefit and give their student athletes the maximum number of opportunities they can give them before the end dates for those seasons in the fall sports come upon us. And so again, and then spring sports, we pivot to our spring sports and move into that scenario going forward with those sports starting in either early March, mid-March for spring.
Les Lukash, Prep Baseball Report.
Tom, you might have just touched on it, a question specifically to those dates, but I wanted to follow up with your thoughts on teams in order to provide the opportunities that you just mentioned, the maximum number of opportunities. The teams entering in these leagues as a club team while also playing, potentially their spring sport, specific to baseball. So they're basically doubling up. Thoughts on the potential for that, and what do you think on this?
Well, one of the guidelines that's very important for everybody to recognize is that California Department of Public Health has stated that students can only be in one cohort at the same time. So the ability to have concurrent play on more than one team per California Department of Public Health guidelines is not permissible. In terms of looking at that as a baseball issue, then that would mean that the student athlete would have the ability to, if the high school baseball season is in place, they could play for their high school team, but not for another team at the same time. But a student's eligibility with their high school program does not begin until they play for their high school team during the high school season. So student athletes playing club at this particular point and up to a point where the high school season is hopefully able to resume would not be violating the rule of being in more than one cohort at the same time. That would only come into play when they began to play on their high school team in the high school season of sport, again, provided that the guidelines of California Department of Public Health let high school baseball happen in the red tier in the season that it is scheduled.
Andrew Turner, Los Angeles Daily Pilot. You're muted, Andrew.
Okay, sorry about that. Dan, thank you for including us in this process and allowing us to ask questions on the decision to cancel the championships today. I wanted to have it clarified which fall sports championships were canceled because the section runs a number of them, but there are also some fall sports in which the section did not run the championships. I believe field hockey being one of those. So if you could just clarify which sports the championships are canceled for and which sports still have an opportunity to perhaps run a tournament of their own for the postseason.
Well, you're right about that. The ones that were specifically addressed in the statement today are those that we conduct a Southern Section Championship in those particular sports. So the ones affected by today's announcement, boys and girls cross country, 8-man football, 11-man football, girls volleyball, boys and girls water polo. Field hockey and gymnastics were other season 1 sports that we do not conduct a Southern Section Championship. So the fall sports calendar that we've already published back in July contains the ending dates for those particular sports where, again, they can continue to run their seasons out to those end dates. But those were not sports where we directly conducted the Southern Section Championships. Therefore, they weren't included in today's statement since we were not canceling a championship that does not exist. So I hope that answers your question.
James Escarcega.
Hi, Rob. Quick question. I know at the Executive Council meeting on Thursday, Mitch Carvey indicated that the section was going to apply for the second round of the the PPP program from the Small Business Association. Can you give us an update on the application process? Thank you.
Sure. Without championship playoff revenue coming into our office, we've been trying to explore all revenue streams that we can to keep our organization functioning and provide the service to our member schools that we provide each day. And so we did qualify for the first round of the payroll protection plan. We have to sort of finalize that arrangement where we ask for loan forgiveness for that first step. And now that a second opportunity has come open, we will begin the application process to get that done. It's a different dynamic now because we have far less employees than we had when we did the first payroll protection plan originally. But we are going to take whatever steps we can, along with working with our corporate partners and our television and broadcast partners and people that are supportive of our organization. They are also additional revenue streams that we are trying to maximize everything that we can involved with those revenue streams. But again, to repeat what I had said earlier, to be in a situation where approximately 50% of our operating revenue is not available to us is an extremely difficult position to be in financially, and is of great concern to us going forward.
Aaron Plunkett, CIF-SOUTHERN section this week.
Hey Rob, question here. The season of competition for high school football, this is regarding high school football, ends April 17th, correct?
Correct.
So now that a lot of the club leagues have started up and they're playing 11 on 11 right now, tackle football, does this mean that once the season of competition is over April 17th, that high schools themselves can go and, form their own leagues, not necessarily with the schools, logos or emblems, but will those high school coaches then be able to form their own leagues and play a similar style of club football if there is no CIF-SOUTHERN section football?
When the end date of the season comes, that's the end date of that season. When you are outside the season of sport, you cannot participate as a school-based team. You can only participate as an outside organization. Call it club, call it whatever, travel, whatever you'd like to call it. So when that April 17th date comes, specifically in football, as you referenced, then that would be the end of the possibility that our schools could be school teams representing their high school. If they are going to continue to play tackle football in a club environment after April 17th, again, that can have no affiliation with the high school in any way. They can't use the high school facilities as the high school, have insurance coverage as the high school, use school equipment. All of those would have to be done by an outside organization, not affiliated with the school, when it is outside the high school season of sport. Okay. Well, I guess I've been informed that that's the end of our questions today. I do want to thank all of you for joining us. I appreciate your interest in what we do and how we do it. We are continue to be accessible to you. I think you know that. Anything that you ever need in terms of contact or information, you work through Assistant Commissioner Tom Simmons, and we will do everything we can to try to provide what it is that you're looking for. I want to thank Tom Simmons. I want to thank Chelsea Hayward. I want to thank AP, Aaron Plunkett, for their help today in setting all of this up. And just want to wish everybody to stay safe, stay healthy, to hope, like we all hope, that we can get through this very, very difficult time and see better days ahead. So again, my thanks to you and good luck to everyone.